Hey, everybody, welcome to Five Fast Questions. Our guest today is Eric Owens. Eric has done many videos on his YouTube channel. He also teaches on Zoom and he instructs people in face to face classes where he teaches carving. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jack, for having me. I appreciate it.
So, you're in Utah, I believe, right?
Boise, Idaho.
Boise, Idaho. Yeah, sometimes I get Idaho and Utah mixed up. Anyway, you.
Most people get Idaho and Iowa mixed up.
Oh, well, they both start with I.
Yeah, it's close.
So thanks for being here today, Eric. I really appreciate your time. I know that you've taught many people about carving, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So let's start with the story. How did you yourself get into wood carving?
I'm asked this question a lot because people want to know how does someone get started in carving, and I really don't know exactly when. I make up a date every time I answer the question. My mother's father carved peach pits and made monkey faces out of them and put them on a keychain and gave them away. So I've been around
Mhm.
carving, and I don't remember that. I just remember being told that. I I've been around carving since I was younger. As a kid, I had a pocket knife, and like every kid, you carve on everything you can. But I got started really when I was in Boy Scouting as an adult. I didn't have much time as a kid in scouting because our scoutmaster quit. So I got involved as an adult when I was in Europe in the military, and my unit sponsored Boy Scout troops. So I got involved in that. And one of the things I realized real quickly was if you don't give kids something to do in the South, we say the hands of the devil's play pretty because they'll take those hands and they'll do something you don't want them to do it with. So they were making sharp sticks so they could poke each other. So as a leadership corps, we had to realize that wasn't what we wanted. So we taught them to do things with a pocket knife and a piece of wood. Kids that come out with this big long blade that's serrated, they want to carve with that. And so every year at summer camp, I'd see kids bring those kind of knives. And it's like you can't really use that here. Let's use this one. I went to summer camp one time after trying to do a lot of things in carving, and I wasn't very good. I was doing neckerchief slides, walking sticks, wasn't very good. And there was a scoutmaster, an elderly scoutmaster, that worked at a camp called Camp Coles in northern Idaho, and he carved bolo ties that the guys would wear on their uniform. And
Yeah.
he gave me one, and I looked at that and I thought, that's about as simple as it gets. Well, it's simple because this guy had done, let's see, I don't know if you can see that very well. 4117. This was
Oh.
4,117. He did Scoutmasters, he did Cowboys, he did Indians, and he did a few other figures. But I looked at that and I thought straight cut, simple thing to do, and I tried to do that, and it was awful. I chewed up a lot of wood trying to do bolo ties. My wife finally bought a class with Cleve Taylor, who's one of our local carvers, and he's written several books. She bought a class with him for me, a 3-day class, and that's how I got started doing caricature carving.
Hmm.
Cleve's a good friend of mine. We stayed good friends, and since then I have carved so many things, and I've taught so many things that I don't know what I'd do if I went 2 or 3. I can go a day without carving, but 2 or 3 days, yeah, I get the itch to get back to it. So I don't know when that exactly was. My wife doesn't remember when the class was. I want to say it was somewhere around 99 or 2000. Might be a little bit later. The earliest things that I could find sitting on the shelf with the date and my name on it is 2006. So
Hmm.
I think during that time when I started in 2006, I was messing around trying to figure out what I really wanted to do, doing snowman or whatever. So it all started in Boy Scouts, and the rest of it's my wife's fault. So you can blame her for me being in here all the time.
Well, let's kind of take that in a similar direction. If you had an opportunity, Eric, to talk with a beginner, and I imagine you do talk with some beginners, some novice wood carvers, and you could give them one piece of advice, but just one, what would that be?
I don't know that I can pick it down to one. I'll let you decide, Jack. Either learn how to sharpen your tools, because that's the biggest drawback to sharpening, or take a class. I don't know
Mm,
which one of those two is most important. I've taken a lot of classes, but I also learned how to sharpen my tools to the point where I can sharpen other people's tools as well. But I think that would be the biggest thing because I cannot stress how many times I see people carving with dull tools.
Mm.
It's dangerous. I mean, you're putting a lot of extra effort into carving with a tool that just can't do the job. I mean, I couldn't use a mini bike out here to pull a freight train. This just wouldn't happen. So I don't know. I don't know how to tell them to do that any stronger than I already do. You're right. I do teach a lot of beginners, and a lot of them come in not even knowing how to hold a knife, not knowing what a stop cut is. You know, they peel the
Yeah.
potatoes, know what a paring cut is, but they don't know how to sharpen their tools, and a lot of them don't know when it's sharp. They're carving and they're carving and they're carving, and they get a little bit off of there, and they think that's success, and they don't realize how much more enjoyable it is when you have sharp tools in your hand and what you can do with those. So I
Hmm.
have to be it'd have to be learn how to sharpen tools, whether you take a class or not, or whether you learn from somebody, YouTube, whatever. There's a lot of different ways, by hand, by machine, whatever. Sharpening your tools is the biggest challenge that I see with carvers. I mean, carvers that I've known for a couple, 2 or 3 years have been carving. They're still using dull tools, and every once in a while, I'll say, "After this meeting's over, I'm going to take your tools and I'm going to sharpen them. I'll deliver them back to you tomorrow." But I just don't want to see them struggle, because that's I think that's one of the biggest things in carving. People go away from it because they find out, well, this is hard to do. Well, heck yeah, it's hard to do. It's not sharp. You can't carve a tree with a butter knife. It just doesn't work. So sharpen the tools. Learn how to sharpen the tools.
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of folks get discouraged. They think that they're doing it wrong, right? They just can't
Right.
cut it, or the wood's
Yeah.
too hard, and you name it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially when you have hand problems anyway. Like I teach a lot of classes, and some of them are through the local school district. They have an evening class schedule going on, and I'll get people that come in and they've never carved, and they're in their 70s, maybe even 80s, and they find out after 15 minutes of carving, especially if the tool's not sharp, they just can't push that knife through the wood. So I have to find ways of helping them get past that without quitting. And you get some that say, "Without, this just isn't for me. It's too hard, and I can't carve." And you just want to take them one by one and show them in the corner, okay, this is what you got to do. And 3 hour class, you don't have time to take everybody aside and do that with. So
Yeah. Yeah, Eric, I mentioned earlier some of the accomplishments that you've accumulated with your YouTube channel. I know you have a website as well, and then all of the instruction. If you think back about your wood carving related achievements, which one would you say you're most proud of?
having been a teacher for 20 years, I really enjoy it when kids come up to me out of the blue. It's people, or even adults that I had in class. So when I see somebody that's been in one of my carving classes and they see me in the grocery store, I was like, "Oh, I love taking your class. It was so much fun." That is probably the biggest feeling of accomplishment that I have, is making a difference, making
Mm.
someone feel good about what they're doing when they take a class. And then they'll come up and talk to you later, which means they're not afraid of you. You didn't scare them, you didn't run them off, but you made them feel better. I've always tried to live with the philosophy that I want people to leave me feeling better about than when they got there. So I don't want them walking away feeling worse. I want them feeling better. As far as accomplishments, I've won blue ribbons, and I've made a difference, and I've demonstrated in front of crowds and in front of classes and whatever. One of the biggest things that I got was some years ago, 2022. Brian Nish, the owner of Treeline USA, saw my carving in their show down in Utah, and he wanted to use that as their catalog picture, and so Brian was able to put that on their catalog, and I got a few copies of that. I was proud of that, because I subsequently sold it too, and I've been in wood carving illustrated 3 or 4 times. But the biggest accomplishment was making people feel comfortable when they come out and carve, even if they never carve again because it just isn't their thing. Making them feel good about doing it and accomplishing something, and walking away with the pieces they say, "Look what I did," when they got home.
Hmm.
That
Oh
to
yeah,
me means a lot.
very
It,
cool.
it, it furthers that thing that we're trying to do, about you're doing too, building a community, trying to
Hmm.
build that community. So
Yeah, that's the name of the game. Yes, for sure. All right, well, let's have a fun fact, Eric. Tell us a fun fact about yourself that most people would be surprised to learn.
I'm originally from Tennessee. I joined the service right after high school, and I've now been in 7 different countries, and I've been to
Hmm.
43 of our United States.
Wow.
The weird thing is, Nevada is just 100 miles over there, and I still haven't been to Nevada. I've been living here almost 30 years, and I've still never been to Nevada. Haven't been to I haven't been to Hawaii. Hadn't been to Alaska. Hadn't been to Louisiana. Hadn't been to North Dakota. Hadn't been to Vermont, and hadn't been to New Hampshire. I don't know that I'll ever get to all of those, but I've seen a lot of things. So it's not. And it's not. My wife and I enjoy traveling, so it's been fun to drag her along with me on that too.
Yeah, well, Vermont and New Hampshire are right next to each other. You could knock out
Right.
2 of them. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a long flight from Boise, Idaho.
Yeah.
Who goes to Vermont and New Hampshire from Idaho? Very few, I'd imagine.
Well, Eric, let's go to question number 5, and that's all about resources. We talked a little bit about the Zoom classes and your YouTube channel. Talk about the resources that you have available for carvers and where they can find them.
So I've done a few rough outs. I've talked to Tim Heineke about doing it. He's done a couple rounds of rough outs for me, and it took me a long time to get rid of those rough outs. One of them was an old world Santa, and one was a happy Santa with his hand around his belly and his head back, and he's laughing. The minimum order is 8, and they're $30 a piece. So you lay out quite a bit of money on the hope that you'll sell them fairly quickly. It was about 2 years before I could get rid of all those. They were great carvings, but I just couldn't get anybody interested in. So I don't do a lot of rough outs. I'll do blanks. I did a YouTube of my sports bears, and I ended up having about 5 or 6 of these blanks left over. But anymore, with the cost of wood and shipping, whereas we used to buy those things for $5, $10, now they're $35, $45, $50 plus shipping. And so one of those is going to run easily $45, and that's if the shipping cost doesn't go up. So I don't do a lot of that kind of stuff simply because it's just unless I don't travel and do a lot of classes anymore. I used to do a lot, and I do a couple of them in Washington, Oregon, but I don't have the ability to travel to West Virginia or something like that and do a class. And if I did, I mean, I would have those made up and ship out, but I don't have the ability to do that anymore. And you end up sitting on a lot of inventory. I know, talking to a lot of the carvers that I've taken a class from, like the CCA guys, they'll sit on a lot of inventory in the hope that they sell it within a year. And maybe they will, and maybe they won't, but that's a lot of money to tie up when you're running a small business like this. You know, I've heard it said that wood carving is the quickest way to starve to death because you don't make a lot of money. And so you don't want a lot of it sitting on the shelf back here behind me. Luckily, only about 2 or 3 of those are mine. I've thought about going into it, but I don't have a lot of extra time between the shows that we do and the commissions that I'm doing. I don't have a whole lot of time to make a carving and then send it off to have somebody do it and then ship it back. You know, that's a month process. And then you hope you sell it sometime in down the road. But occasionally I end up with some donations from some of our carvers who passed away, and it passes through our club. And occasionally I'll get some things like that I could sell off, but not very much. It's so expensive to hold that stuff in your house for a while, because it may be a year before you sell all those. And I occasionally I'll do a short class, 3 days or whatever, and I'll bring my own blanks that I cut out on a bandsaw. But on a rough out, it's send it off to somebody, to pay them $35 plus shipping to get back. You got to sell it for quite a bit. And I know these carvers, like more rough out than others, they're sitting on a lot of inventory and they hope they could sell it. And when they don't, you gotta figure out another way of doing things. So I'd love to have a lot of resources, things that I offer, other than my YouTube channel, which I try to keep up as much as I can. I'm on Facebook, Eric Owens Carving. I'm on Instagram, Eric Owens Carver. I have an Etsy shop. Look for me at Eric Owens Art, all one word. And so I sell a little bit of stuff from that, and I get commissions from that. People call up and say, I like this one. Can you make another one for me? Because that one's sold out. So other than that, I don't have a lot of resources that I sell just by themselves. I sell a lot of finished products because my wife and I do about 8 shows a year in the local area. And a lot of people. I had a guy, he bought two cowboys he's dressed like a cowboy at our cowboy show. And he bought 2 cowboys that he liked there and then commissioned me to do another one. I delivered it last week, and he wanted to buy 2 more cowboys that I had in the truck too. So he ended up buying 5 from me, and a lady in San Antonio bought 12 over the last year. So
wow.
I I enjoy that part because I do a carving that I enjoy, and then somebody buys it off Etsy. Doing it on as a commission is a little bit harder because now they want to, I had some guy just got a hold of me from Minnesota. He wants me to do a Sam Elliott, and Sam Elliott I did is about 12 inches tall. He wants it shrunk down to 6 so it'll fit in his shelf. You lose a lot of details that way,
Mm.
but it's a lot of fun when you start trying to fit in their vision with yours because he wants this and this and this, and then you try to fit it in there, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. But I enjoy doing that in terms of meeting new people and putting art in their house. I think everybody should own carvings and have them, even if it's a trinket sitting on the shelf. We've been carving for thousands of years, and just have another one is just a connection to a long list of carvers going thousands of years ago, whether they carved with a stone tool or whether they're carving with a metal knife. It's a long history of people who made art out of wood. So I like passing that on to people.
It's very cool. Well, it's a great hobby, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I do watercolor painting and acrylic, and I've kind of put that aside for the last several years because I enjoy this so much. The 3D art to me fills more of my creative ability than the 2D art. I love them both, but I like the carving more than that.
Eric, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit with me and answer these 5 questions. And
Thanks for having me,
if there's any time that you need anything from me, just give me a holler.
Jack. I appreciate that. We cousins got to stick together, don't we?
There you go.
All
Folks,
right.
thanks for joining us today. And we appreciate you being here. We'll be back with another session of 5 Fast Questions sometime soon. Bye-bye.
See y'all.